bright. Pull your hat down, make sure your cinch is tight. Horse is kinda snuffy, cold chill up your spine. You'll get your ass moving, son, we're burning daylight.
Howdy there, I'm Matt McKinley and we're burning daylight.
In the saddle till the job's done right.
Welcome to Burning Daylight, the only podcast for the working cowboy. Well, howdy there, daylight burners. Welcome back to the show. We got a very special guest, a fella named Jon Amour. He wrote a book called Branded. I believe is it out yet, sir, or is it's getting ready to be?
No, it's been published since 1st of August.
Okay, so it's out. I've had a chance to read about halfway through it, and then read a little bit about the backstory behind it, and it's fascinating. And rather than me ruining the synopsis, since I got the author and the guy that outside the man that committed the crime knows more about it than anybody else. So, Jon, how are you today, sir?
I'm doing good. Thanks, Matt, for having me.
You're very welcome. So this show is aimed towards the working cowboy and then whoever else wants to listen to it. And this is the perfect type of story that any good cowhand would love to hear about. So if you don't mind, give us a little kind of brief bio of yourself and how you came across this story and the whole spiel, I guess.
Okay. Well, first, I just want to say Burning Daylight. I believe that John Wayne penned that.
Mm-hmm.
And is that right?
Yes, sir.
Yeah. All right. So, and I use Burning Daylight all the time. I'm always telling my wife, hurry up, we're burning daylight.
Mm.
So, and usually I get hit. But, and I think I even used it in the book in a few places. But Bob, the character of the book, Bob, he used to use that saying as well. So, but this book is about a guy named Bob Leach, and he was a cattle rustler and a thief by trade, basically, of anything and everything that wasn't tied. And he ran a lot of drugs, and he has a nemesis named Diamond Jim in the book. And at an early age, now I came upon this story. I've always wanted to be a novelist, since I was a young kid. Just never got around to it, with life smacking me in the face, through a marriage and children and everything else. So finally, over the last 4 or 5 years, I've been able to sit down and actually put all this stuff to paper. This takes place in 1999, 2000, the time period when I knew him. But the story covers, from when he was a small child also. His dad raised him up, kind of as a criminal right off the bat, had him running drugs, cattle medicines, stolen cattle medicines, from ranch to ranch and selling them for pennies on the dollar. And then he escalated into, selling pot and cocaine and all kinds of stuff. And then he got hooked up with a couple of bad DPS officers, and started stealing cattle. So he started when he was young. He was stealing a lot of cattle back in the 1980s. Then he progressed to moving to North Texas after he'd spent some time in jail for various things. And leased a ranch near me, next door to me. And he started running cattle by the semi-truck loads at that point. And he rustled, it's anybody's guess. I think they say between 1.5 and $2.5 million worth of cattle, and he borrowed millions of dollars in loans on other people's herds. And to tell you the truth, I really don't know how he ever thought he would get away with it. It was kind of a Ponzi scheme. It was just like steal from one guy to make the other guy happy, kind of a thing. But he got caught. They chased him down on horseback, arrested him, and then he broke out of the Grayson County Jail with 4 other inmates. And went on a terror rampage across 5 counties in North Texas, kidnapping, raping, stealing cars and trucks, and holding people hostage in their homes. So um, I'll leave it right there for you to ask any questions before, but I don't want to give the whole book away, but it's pretty sensational, some of the things that he did and was involved in. And I know you're probably going to ask, did he really do all these things? All of the things that all the crimes he actually committed are in the book, and they are real. And then, this is a fiction novel, so, there's parts of the book where I've added background characters and things to support his criminal lifestyle, and, people and things to support his lifestyle, and embellished, some of the story. So I'm going to leave that to the readers to determine, who's who's real, what things really happened and what things didn't. Most of this stuff can be researched in the newspapers and magazine articles. GQ magazine did a pretty good article on him back in 2005 and published it. Washington Post has similar stories. I think every newspaper in the country has written about this guy at one point in time. So,
and it's a guy named Bob Leach, right?
right.
Okay. And so, how did you just come through this through the news and get real interested in it, or how did you come across this? I guess to come so in depth with it to write a novel based on it.
Well, he was, I alluded that, to the fact that I had lived down the road from him,
Mm-hmm.
on a small acreage, and he had leased a bunch of, thousands of acres in the area for his cattle rustling schemes. And, so one day, my children were small, and we had just moved there, and it was the first weekend we were there, and it was my young daughter's birthday. So I thought, this would be really cool to, see if I could find a horse or pony or something, and she could ride with all of her friends at a birthday party. So I went banging on doors and had almost every door that I banged on, slammed in my face. I was coming to the realization that, most of these horses out there are $500,000, breeding horses and racing like that. And you don't just borrow one of those very easily. So, the last ranch I went to was his ranch, and his wife was standing in the driveway with a horse tied up to the fence, and she had chaps on and boots and hat and everything, was riding. And so I pulled in and I asked her, about the pony or, a gentle horse or something. And she just, Bob was sitting in his truck about another 500 yards off, and she pointed to him and said, "Give me your number and I'll give it to my husband and he'll call you later." Well, he never called. I woke up in the morning and went out to have my coffee on the front porch, and there was a horse fully saddled, ready to go, tied up on my front porch, eating my bushes. So, so the kids enjoyed the horse for the day, and then he sent a ranch hand down to pick it up and rode it back to the ranch. I went to thank him, never could, it was a couple of weeks before I could ever get to him. The gate at the ranch was always closed. It was open one day. I snuck in, knocked on the door, and finally got to meet Bob for the first time. And he was very suspicious of me at first, but then he finally opened the door all the way and let me in. And he'd asked, I offered some money, and he wouldn't take it. But he asked me, do you know anything about ovens? And I said, well, no, not really. But he goes, well, do you mind taking a look at this? So, in this old ranch house, he had an oven that was like made in the 1950s. And said, yeah, this thing's got to go. You're going to have to buy a new one. So he rolled out a big wad of cash from his pocket, started peeling off $100 bills, and asked me if I'd mind going and getting him an oven and putting it in. And so I said, sure. So I think the oven cost me $250 or something. I tried to give him his change, and he wouldn't take it. He just told me to keep it. So that was the first of many things I've done for him around the ranch, and we became friends. I did some remodeling on his house and replacing windows and doors and things like that. And I built a horse show arena for him with lights and everything, and did all the electrical work, and just, things. I finally progressed into actually working the cattle with him. So Bob taught me how to ride a horse. He taught me how to rope. He taught me how to mend fences, and a lot of other ranch activities. And we worked the chutes, doctored cattle, and just anything you can think of, and there was a lot of stuff in my time there that, I thought was kind of suspicious. And, me never being around a ranch, I just thought it was a normal way of ranch life. Like, the cowhands in the barn with cowgirls, and, they come out with their pants half up, and, dirt on their knees, whatever, so, there was a lot of stuff going on at that ranch. And if Hugh Hefner had a ranch, it would be that one. If there was if there really was a whiskey river, it was running through that place. So, so that's how I got to know him. We became good friends. We went to dinner almost every Friday night at his favorite Mexican restaurant. We played around on the lake on this boat. I watched his ranch for him while he was in the hospital with back surgery for a couple of weeks. At that time, that's when the FBI and the Texas Rangers came in and cut all the locks off the gate and went in looking around at cattle brands and stuff. And that's from that point on, that's when the gig was up, and it was just a matter of time before his whole operation was going to come apart.
Huh. So you were there when he got raided, and how was that?
Well, I wasn't there. I had taken a new job in Houston. And so I moved, 2 weeks before he got raided. I moved to Houston, and I actually borrowed his horse trailer, a big 45-foot horse trailer, to move all our stuff. And I returned the horse trailer, stayed the night at his house. We had a couple of beers. The next morning, I think in less than 2 weeks, actually, I read in the newspaper that, of the chase scene and his arrest and everything else. So I wasn't actually there when they raided the ranch.
Huh. That's crazy. What was your thoughts when you heard about it?
I was floored. I was like, no way. This can't be the same guy. Because there's the Denton County Sheriff, Tracy Murphy. He used to be a Texas Ranger until he became sheriff. And I did an interview with him, and he told me that, Bob Bleach was the nicest guy you'd ever meet. And and he was to me and my family too. He gave us horses and ponies, and he took us, and he really was just the nicest guy you'd ever meet. And you'd never suspect that he was doing anything like that. That's why I thought, when I saw him on the news, I thought that just can't be. That can't be right. So I started digging. I collected every newspaper article. Talked to anybody and everybody I knew that knew anything about it, and just started collecting that stuff over the years, until I finally got to the point where I felt like I had enough to write a book. I started to write a biography, and that's why it was taking so long. And I just found out that I'm not a biographer. I just don't like to do research. I don't like timelines, and I don't like those kinds of digging, in records and things like that. So I converted, everything I had at that point to a novel, a fiction novel. So that's where we are with the book right now. It's a fiction novel. So.
Well, it's very, very well written. Like I said, I'm about halfway through it, and like it's an intriguing story. It's a real easy read, and I'm looking forward to getting through the rest of it. Now, I was reading through the GQ article just right before we hopped on here, and like it seems like this guy went just like real evil real quick there when everything popped off. I mean, it seemed like it was more like the normal day-to-day mob type stuff that where nobody really gets hurt, but money's taken, this and that, but nobody's really hurt. And then it went to like the dark side real quick.
Yeah. And that says a lot for the, about the people that he was involved with. Diamond Jim character, and his dad pushing him into crime. His dad always told him, you got to color outside of the lines, a little bit. And Bob really didn't know what that meant for a while. He didn't know what his daddy was telling him. You got to do some dirty deeds if you want to get ahead. And he finally figured that out, and that's where he went, because he wanted a ranch and a farm of his own someday. And and being a cowboy is a tough life, and he thought, well, this was a way for me to get my dreams. And he's talked to him. He's called me 3 times today alone, so I talked to him quite a bit when they're not
Oh, no
online.
kidding.
Yeah, he's in Huntsville prison, the high security unit, and so he's broken out of jail twice. So they're not, when they finally put him in jail, for these crimes, they wanted to make sure he didn't get out, so they put him in the Estelle unit, which is a high security unit in Huntsville, Texas, and
Wow.
so he is the nicest guy when I talk to him on the phone, but he's still a con man. He still tries to get me to exchange money with people for him and put money on his account and do this, that, and the other. And hey, can you give so and so this? And and I'm like, look, Bob, I told you when I contacted you again that I'm not going to be your banker. I'm not going to be this. I'm not going to be that. So quit trying to con me, because I'm not going to do any of that. If you want a friend to talk to, that's fine, but I'm not going to get involved in any of your schemes. They say once a con man, always a con man. So just about everything that comes out of his mouth is a con. So it's
Well, did he ever show any sort of remorse for any of it?
Yeah, actually he did. He really has a good heart. He loves people. He loves to take care of people. He loves to make, he's given a lot of the ill-gotten money that he's had over the years. He had so much money that he didn't know what to do with it. You can't put it in the bank. He had it in suitcases. He stuffed it in his walls in his barn. It's said that there's $9.5 million buried somewhere on the ranch in barrels. There's all kinds of rumors about stashed money and videotapes of him and stuff. But he was very generous to a lot of ladies. Bought them cars and vehicles and paid for their college and their books and their tuition. He just gave money away because he didn't know what else to do with it. He never gave me any money. I just benefited from being able to work on a ranch, which is something I thought was very intriguing at the time. And the only money, he ever gave me was, the little extra cash from doing chores and stuff around it, his ranch. But he sure did take a lot of people to the bank, though.
Yeah, it's just wild how some of that stuff, once it escalates, and then all of a sudden they're, like you said, I don't even know what to do with all this, because you try to go put it in the bank, and you're immediately going to get raided by the FBI.
Yeah, it's ironic he's never been prosecuted for cattle rustling. So they had enough. When he broke out of the Grayson County jail, the crime spree he went on then, that cumulatively got him 14 life sentences. So I guess they figure, well, no sense in prosecuting somebody for cattle rustling, if he's going to spend the rest of his life in jail anyway. So
yeah.
So he's got, every time I call him, he's got a story. He's got some story about, oh, I was just stabbed, or they threw me over the railing. I got in a fight last week, and all this stuff. So you never really know how much of what he's telling you is true. A lot of times he tries to gain your sympathy or get you to do something for him, and that's how he does it. Sometimes he'll say, well, I'm not going to live much longer in here. This, that, and the other. And then he'll turn around and say, I really could use a fan or a typewriter or something like that. And so he's fishing for something. He needs something, and he's trying to make you feel sorry for him. That's what con.
Yeah.
But he was a real cowboy. He worked horses. He was very good at training horses, busting horses. He did some work for Bum Phillips and for Benny Binion, back in the day, breaking stuff. I have a feeling if he'd have just stuck to the real cowboy life, busting horses, probably would have gotten out of the crime ring that he was in. But the character Diamond Jim in the book, now he's the reason why the book is called Branded is because Bob was branded to this guy in the book, and so Diamond Jim was kind of like an underworld figure, and it's kind of like, say, once you're in the mob, you never get out. Well, that's kind of what Branded is here. It's he's branded for life to this guy. even in jail, he says. And so, you know, that I don't know what to think about that. You know, when he tells me he could never get out from underneath Diamond Jim, it just seems to me that that's a little sensational. But you know, I guess that happens every day. I mean, in the mobster life and the underworld life, you know, that's probably the case.
Yeah, I think so. I mean, shoot, there's songs about that Diamond Jim guy out there, and
I think that's a different Diamond Jim, but yeah,
is it?
yeah,
Is it? Maybe so.
well, Diamond Jim is just a name that typically a lot of writers, because it
Mm.
sounds sensational. It sounds like sounds a little crooked, I guess.
Yeah, well, it works because I mean, like I said, that's what came to mind when I first read it was like there's like 3 different versions of a song, so I don't know. It's a fascinating story though. Now was he running drugs like narcotics the whole time, or was that something he came into later in the whole deal, or was it all just kind of one big, like, I guess, shit heap? That
started out with selling the cattle medicines, and then his daddy got busted for that, and he got fired from the ranch he was working at, and then once he got hooked up with the Diamond Jim character, it escalated into pot, running marijuana up to the northeast into the Danbury, Connecticut area, and then it went from running the pot to pot and coke. Then he also had flying lessons when he was young too. His dad bought a small airplane and he learned to fly in, so they could go check the ranch, on the outskirts of the ranch, and he, in the story in the book, he runs a lot of drugs in a small Cessna plane with another guy back and forth from Mexico, landing back in Houston, in the Houston area on a small airstrip out in the country, and then they distributed those, this guy Diamond Jim in the book, he has a network of people, and they distributed the drugs all across Texas and the country. So it went into that, and it involved sex and sex parties and porn and just about anything you can think of. This guy had his hands in. He was making movies of people in precarious positions and blackmailing people and selling these videos and stuff overseas, and it goes pretty deep.
he was like a cowboy Jeffrey Epstein then.
Yeah, something like that.
Huh. Wild. That's
yeah. Like I said, if Hugh Hefner had a ranch, it would be this place, because there were a lot of young girls running around this ranch all the time, half naked, out of the barn with their clothes half off, and they played there, rode the horses there, they helped work around the ranch and stuff, and then at night it got a little crazy, with all these girls running around, and I wasn't privy to anything that went on in the house, but I'm pretty sure there was a lot of sex parties and things like that going on, and I know there was all over the rest of the ranch, because I would catch people all the time in the barn. Cowboys got some girl jacked up on a hay bale, and they go at it. There was times when they'd all jump. Bob and a couple of girls would jump in a boat, a little rowboat out on a pond, and go out there and mess around. And he was always working some woman somewhere.
Yeah.
And there wasn't, there weren't any women that were saying no to him. He just kind of had this aura or charisma about him that just drew the women in. He had the personality. He knew how to talk. He knew how to schmooze, and just about every woman that crossed his path, he ended up in bed with. So he was a very colorful guy, very generous. And very, very criminal at the same time.
Yeah, like I said, that's crazy. And you got to you got to know him real well, and but you never suspected any of like the real crazy stuff. You just knew something was kind of weird.
Yeah, I mean, I knew something was kind of weird. the first I really started thinking hard about there being something wrong was when the locks were all cut off at branch gates, and then broken locks were laying in the grass, and he was in the hospital, so I called him and come up to feed the horses and the cows this morning, and the locks are all cut on the gates, and he said, well, don't worry about that. He goes, I know who that is. And, that he left it at that. So I never suspected anything. In that world, I didn't know too much about that world at the time. I was very naive. And I just assumed it was, a dispute between him and, somebody else or something like that. I never thought in my mind that it was the FBI or the Texas Rangers for sure. But he told me to go up to the hardware store and ask if anybody had been in buying bolt cutters lately. So I went up to the local hardware store, and the guys told me, yeah, there's a couple guys in suits came in a few days ago and bought 2 bolt cutters. And I'm like, okay, well, there you go. So that was kind of suspicious, and and I told Bob about that, and then I think that's when he truly, really started getting nervous and realizing that the fuse is lit and it's only a matter of time. But he never let on to me anything was wrong. There was a lot of crazy stuff that always went on out there and I just thought it was just a mix of cowboys and crazy women that were always hanging around there. That you never knew what was going to happen next. There was always a party. There was always somebody, playing around with a gun, or we were sitting on the back of a tailgate of a truck one night drinking some beer, and his wife comes out and points a rifle right at Bob, puts it right in his face, and tells him, if you ever mess around with that woman again, I'll shoot you in the head. And she turns around and walks off. And Bob didn't even flinch. He didn't even flinch, but me and the other guy, we jumped up off the truck and, dropped our beers and stood far to the side while it was going on. And I asked him after she went back into the house, what was that all about? And he just said, well, I think she's on a period. So, he was messing around with multiple women at the same time, and his partner in crime, his wife, was I'm pretty sure she knew all of it. I think she was in on a lot of it, and there was just particular women that she did not like and didn't want Bob to hang around. But I think it was one of those free for all kind of marriages anyway. She was more his babysitter for the character Diamond Jim in the book than anything. And so, their characters in the book play off each other. So she was pretty much just his keeper, for the Diamond Jim character. And, and I don't know how far you've gotten into the book. I don't want to give anything away, but surely you've gotten to that part by now, but
I think so. Yeah, I think so.
So she was it was kind of an arranged relationship between them two. And, she thought in her mind, oh, this might be my cowboy for life, because she was never able to hold a man down. And, she tried to change him into what she wanted him to be. And it was just like oil and water.
Yeah, that's really, yeah, and it's hard to, without going into too much detail of all of it, without ruining the story. Like, it's just, it's so crazy, and so like everybody that's listening, like if this is one you want to go read, because it's just a crazy story. I was just fascinated by all of it, and I mean, because it is just like it's almost like a Martin Scorsese movie, but just set in Texas,
Right. Yeah, and so I did interview 2 of his victims, and it was an elderly couple that were that they held hostage out in the country in the farmhouse. And this is when the Texas Rangers finally caught up with him for good, right before they broke out of the Grayson County Jail. And so they held this older couple hostage, and so you were asking earlier, is there anything unique about that? I can't remember exactly what the question was, but he did, 12 years later, after he was in jail for 12 years, he wrote them a letter apologizing for his kidnapping them and breaking into their house and everything that he put them through. And, so he does have some remorse. I think that's what you were asking earlier. And he befriended them, and they wrote letters back and forth all the way up until last year when the Vincent died. He was one of the captives, and so he and his wife were held hostage. And they wrote letters back and forth talking about ranching and all kinds of other things for years. I've got all those letters that they wrote, and so I feel like he does have remorse, but he's I don't know I don't know if that's real or not. I mean, I think it is, but I'm not a psychiatrist, but I'm just not sure how somebody as narcissistic and egotistical as he is has any remorse. Uh, that would be an interesting study. Yeah.
Yeah, it's crazy. Now was he involved in any murders, or was it strictly just I mean the obviously the kidnapping and the rapes, as bad as it gets, but did he kill anybody?
No, he didn't. He never killed anybody. I talk in the book in a few places about other people suggesting, hey, we can just knock this guy off, or we can just shoot him and throw him in a pond or whatever in the dump, and Bob played those down every time that somebody brought something up like that. He said, no, we're not killing anybody. I'm not going to jail for murder. And so he never did anything like that I know of. Of course.
Yeah.
Who knows? What he's.
Yeah. It's
He doesn't have any murder charges or anything ever brought against him, and none in the criminal record or anything like that. So.
Well, and you'd think if with enough stuff they had on him already, they would know about a murder.
Yeah. Now I can't guarantee, any of the other characters I wrote in, I'm not going to give away any of the story, but, there is a little bit of that action, murder mystery type stuff in the book, but, it's like I said, it's fiction. So.
Yeah. Well, the cool thing about the whole story is like he gave you plenty to work with, so you could throw some really crazy shit in there, and it was just right along the lines of the stuff that actually happened. So.
Yeah. So
like you could really use your imagination.
Right. And my goal in writing, in novels, is that I can play a little bit of God, and I can develop my own characters, even though it's based on a true story, the development of all the other characters spiraling around him is where my creativity comes in. And I really, he started me out wanting to write a book to kind of think he could, maybe open up some of his cases and get them reversed and this, that, and the other. And I'm like, I don't think I can do that for one. And, I don't want to, I don't want to stick a stick in any hornet's nest either. So, I brought him back around to, it doesn't really matter what I write about you. People are only going to remember you for how you were portrayed in the newspapers and the magazines, that they wrote. That's what I can write a book about how nice you are and what a great person and everything else. No one's ever going to believe that. Not after reading, what you can find online about this guy. So, I told him, look, you square yourself up with God. That's probably the most important thing you can do. And then just let the world think, the world is going to think of you the way that they've written it, in the newspapers. That's how they remember you. Doesn't matter, if you square yourself up, it doesn't matter what they think of you. So, I kind of convinced him along those lines, and then that kind of got him out of steering the direction of my book, because I really didn't want to write a biography. I just wanted to write about this colorful cowboy character that did all these bad things. So, but in the book, so I did try to portray him as the nicest guy you'd ever want to meet in a lot of situations, because he really was. But that was just part of his con too. So
yeah.
I didn't make him out to be entirely a bad guy. He did, I show him with a little bit of heart, a sense of humor, and as a nice guy also.
He's the anti-hero. Just, I mean, there's all sorts of, like that. He's a Tony Soprano type character where
Right. Yeah. He's the kind
he's
of
an
guy a
awful
lot of
person,
people.
but you still love him.
Yeah. He's the kind of guy that a lot of people, straight-laced people, they wonder, how does a person end up like that? And they kind of like to live vicariously through the story and through his eyes of what was going through his mind and his brain at the time he was doing this stuff. Because you could never imagine doing that yourself, you know, uh, and putting yourself and your freedom at risk, and all the activities he was doing. So it's kind of fun to just read about him and from his viewpoint, what was going through his head, um, and let the reader, feel his trouble and feel his heart when he had one. So
Yeah. Well, it's a very interesting the way you told it. And like I said, I'm not all the way through, but I I got the whole press packet that your publicist sent, and so I kind of went through all of it, and so I knew the premise leading into the book that you're aware of this guy, you know him, and like it's a very interesting way that you portray it, and I really enjoy the story. I can't recommend it enough so far, and I'm not even all the way through it. It's really an interesting read. I've really enjoyed it.
yeah, it's a good read. It'll take you a little while to get through it. It's kind of a thick book, but
A lot of stuff in there though. It's
yeah,
I mean, the guy
I've
was
had a
a
lot of
busy man.
I've had a lot of people tell me that they were intimidated by such a big book, but they tell me at the same time it was an easy read. I couldn't put it down. It just flowed from one chapter to the next. So for all those folks out there that maybe think that they'll never get through a book that thick, you will. It just takes you, because you won't want to put it down after you finish a chapter. You'll want to go on to the next chapter. That's the way I
Yeah.
feel. And then before you know it, you'll be done. But it keeps you wrapped up in the story all the way through. So it's not like one of these things you're going to put it down. If you put it down, you're probably going to walk off thinking, I need to hurry up and do do my chores or whatever it is I'm doing so I can get back to that.
Yeah.
A lot of books. I've read a lot of books where I'll get halfway through and I've lost my interest, and I've never gone back and finished them. So I don't think this is one of them. I think this is one when you pick it up and you start reading it. You're going to be thrust into the show, and you're going to be living there right with him and his antics, and you're not going to put down. So,
Yeah, and like I said, just following along with what I read from media sources, and then along with the book, like it does the story justice while like you said, allowing some little speculation and adding your own flavor to it with the outside characters, but it does the story pretty good justice, and yeah, it's a very fascinating story. So like, yeah, don't let the length of it fool you, because there's plenty in there to keep you going. There's so much there.
it's got a lot of a lot of cowboy stuff, and it's got a little bit of 50 Shades of Grey there for the women too. So.
Yeah, I was wondering, have you got a bunch of emails from the ladies, because it's kind of right up their alley on that romance novel stuff.
Well, if Instagram is any measure of, what that's like, there's a lot of, I don't know if they're robots or what, or bots or whatever they call them, but
Yeah.
there's a lot of ladies that all of a sudden show up on the social media platforms. So,
well, it's really, like I said, it's really well done, and just a fascinating story. And it's like, looking back on it now, like how crazy is it for you? Just like that all kind of happened right under your nose too.
well, looking back, they always say hindsight is 2020. I mean, looking back, I remember things that were going on at the ranch when I was there. Uh, and at the time I didn't think anything about them, but now, knowing the story, the full story, and his background, I see what it was for what it was, and
Mm-hmm.
all the messing around between ranch hands and girls that would come to the ranch, and the relationships that they built in their little horse club they had going on, and all this kind of stuff. They were all messing around with each other. It was like Peyton Place, and now I put it together. But back then I thought, I didn't put too much thought into what they were doing, or why they were sneaking off, or why was the barn locked and I couldn't get in to get any hay. And 10 minutes later, a couple cowboys would come shooting out each side, and then the girls would come out about 5 minutes later. So there was a lot of that going on, and a lot of that, and I never saw any drugs at the ranch or anything like that, except for there was some cowboys that were smoking some pot, things like that. But it when I try to think about things back then, it's just like all of a sudden Bob's got a boat, and I'm like, okay, I never questioned where he got his money or anything, and I never really knew how much his boat cost. But, he just invited me. I just went along for the ride. He invited me to the lake every time he went, and we tubed on the lake and had a good time drinking beer and things like that. And bought a new house. He bought new trucks. He had money just coming out of his ears for everything. And every time I went with him somewhere, and I tried to pay, he would tell me to put my money away. Don't worry, it's on me. So, never really knew anything was going on, and until I was able to put it together, see the stories in the newspaper, and then research his background, and I found out how much trouble he'd really been in life.
Yeah.
Really, what I couldn't believe was that I was hanging around this guy that seemed to be my best friend. I never knew he was a criminal, but he'd been a hardened criminal his whole life. And you just never know. You never know what your neighbors, what's going on with your neighbors. It made me think, how much danger was I in that entire time I was around him? Because you'd have pissed off ranchers coming looking for their cattle that he sold. There were disputes and yelling matches and screaming, and a couple guns pulled at the ranch here and there. And and I never knew what was going on in any of his business deals or his. He used to sit on the living room when I was doing work, sit on the living room couch, and he'd scroll through the ranch magazines and make phone calls and stuff. And I kind of was curious about what he was doing. He said he was looking for grazing land, and that's all he told me. But really what he was doing, he was scamming ranchers out of their cattle. He was, down in South Texas, they had a huge drought in the South Padre Corpus. So those ranchers wanted to move their cattle onto fertile ground. So he would take advantage of that situation and offer up his land to graze these cattle. And they would ship him to him in semi trucks. And mainly just one guy, but he had almost 1,000, 12 or 6, I can't remember, 1,200 or 1,600 head he got from one guy, and he sold off every last one of them. And I think the guy went bankrupt and broke. But and a lot of those cattle I helped work, through the chutes, never knowing, that what his intention was with them. Just never know. You hang around somebody like that, you never know how much danger you're in, or what they're going to expose you to, that kind of thing.
Now, did they ever contact you? Do you ever have to provide statements to the FBI or the Texas Rangers or anything?
No, not a single one.
And I guess, but you said they got him on the breaking out of jail and then the kidnapping and the rape and all that stuff. So, I mean, I guess once that happens, the cattle stuff kind of, that kind of goes by the wayside.
Yeah, even though that cattle operation destroyed some people's lives, I guess there wasn't anything they could do to get the cattle back, and the people weren't going to get their money back, so they had to file bankruptcy or whatever other legal means they could do to protect themselves. But he was just crazy. With that kind of, and it's not only in Texas, did he rustle some cattle, but he did in Louisiana too. So he got he got to spend a little time in Louisiana court system for him and his wife both for rustling some cattle from a producer over in Louisiana, Lake Charles area.
I was reading a book on, or listening to a book on Huey Long the other day, and Louisiana's got some strange laws on the books, you know. So I bet that was fun for him.
Yeah, well, he claims he had while he was there, this isn't in the book, it got cut from the book, but just a little backstory. So while he was there, he claims he fell in love with the sheriff's daughter. And it was the only female sheriff in the history of the Lake Charles Police Department or sheriff's. And so he claims he befriended the sheriff's daughter and fell in love with her, so he could get special favors while he was in prison there. Or in the jail, and I don't know if there's any truth to this or not, but he claims that Tim McGraw and Faith Hill were friends with the sheriff, like lifetime friends with the sheriff, and he claims that they brought him some Wendy's food and wanted to sit down and talk to him and stuff. And that's those kinds of stories that could have happened. Maybe it did. I don't know. He's telling me these things. I just didn't feel like that. I thought that was I tried to reach out to the sheriff to confirm, and they would never respond back to me. So she had left the sheriff's office in disgrace, I think, and just didn't want to talk to anybody. But so I don't know whether things like that happened or not. He still has a pending case in Lake Charles, cattle rustling case. I asked him why it was still open, and I said in case he gets out of jail. So I don't know how long they can leave those cases open, or but it's still open. But yeah, he's a very colorful, colorful guy. Yeah, like I said, he's called me 3 times today already, and asking me questions about the book and this, that, and the other. He likes the book, by the way. He's read it all, and he's using it to his advantage in jail. I guess he's getting favors from people and all kinds of other stuff. I don't know how he's doing it, but he'll call me and ask me to send so and so a letter and call this person. I said, Bob, I'm not doing that. I'm not going to be your mail carrier, your banker, your writer, your lawyer, none of that. You'll have to find somebody else to do all that. I'm not doing it. So. A lot of times he'll just call to talk, and it's usually very brief. He's usually got somebody screaming behind him. They need to use the phone. They've got 3 phones between 1,000 guys or something like that. So my conversations with him are very short. He writes a lot more letters now than he talks on the phone. So yeah, and it's always drama. It's always drama. So
he's like a high school girl.
Yeah, it's things like, if you don't put some money on my account, by Monday, they're going to beat me up. I'm like, well, you shouldn't have gotten yourself in that situation.
Right.
I'm not going to, I tell them I don't have any money, obviously I don't want to, give, him the impression that I'm going to be his bank, but,
oh yeah.
So I refuse to do those things. And then he calls me the next week and I'm like, well, did you get beat up? It never happens.
Does he ever remember those stories, or is it just on to the next one?
It's on to the next one, but he usually remembers his stories, which is really amazing. Yeah. He remembers everything he tells me or thinks of. So
it sounds like he's pretty brilliant when it comes down to it.
Yeah, he is in a lot of ways. I hate to think what he could have done, with his smarts if he'd applied them differently, but he chose to go down a different path. So,
yeah,
but
that's wild. That's just. I will say though, like if you're ever at, when you're like go to an airport bar, you've got like a top 5 like cool story of of random just you could knock people out just off their stool with like, oh, I'm friends with this guy.
Well, for almost 20 years, before I got to writing on this, seriously writing on this. We would have people over to the house and we'd go places, and yeah, I would tell that story. Everybody would have a story to tell, and that would be my story. And every single person has said, you should turn that into a book, or that should be a movie, or, and I'm just like, yeah, I'm working on it. And, so, I'm finally to that point, and people still say the same thing, now it's, when's the sequel or when's the movie? So, and I hope to be working on that over the next few years, as I've got some interest, from some filmmakers. So, we'll see where that goes in time.
That's awesome.
It would make a good movie, yes.
Oh, it'd be an amazing movie. If you ever need somebody to read the audiobook, I'll keep me in mind. I wouldn't mind.
Yeah, I've actually got a guy that's already doing an audiobook for this.
Awesome. Well, I'm looking forward to that too. I spend a lot of time on horseback, so I don't physically read as much as I'd like to, but I got a lot of audiobooks, and so I've always got an earbud in, and it's
I've got a guy. We asked for a Sam Shepard type. The character is what we're looking for, and not Shepard. Sam Elliott.
Sam Elliott. Yeah.
And I wanted his kind of voice, and of course, Sam Elliott's expensive, but
yeah.
There was a couple of guys that threw out some numbers to me, and and I just thought, well, I'm not gonna. That's a big chunk of change. So finally hit on one guy who was interested, and we liked his voice and everything, and so I hired him, and I thought he was just straight out of Texas. I thought maybe he lived in Waco or somewhere, the way he talked and everything, and turns out he lives in Scotland.
Oh, no kidding.
And I'm like, okay, so he's doing a good job with the narration, and he's done now. We're just in a review thing. I'm hoping to have it out by the end of the month, but that's my first audiobook, and I don't listen to audiobooks, so I really don't know what they're supposed to sound like. It's kind of trial and error thing. If I need to do it over, I will, but it should be okay. I have no basis, for what an audiobook is really supposed to sound like, because I've never listened to one.
I've listened to them a lot, and there's there's certain narrators that they go across different authors and whatnot, but it all comes down to the story. Like some readers are better than the others, but if the story's good, yeah, that's all that really matters. So you'll be fine, I think.
Yeah, so that will be out hopefully by the end of the month. We'll have that wrapped up.
Awesome.
It's available right now in paperback and on Kindle, and soon the audiobook.
Well, if I buy one directly from you, will you sign it and send it to me?
Absolutely.
Hell yeah! All right. Well, where can they find all your stuff? For the book, if you're on social media and whatnot, where can they find you?
They can Google on Amazon, branded by Jon Amour, and you'll get the book there, either version. And I do have an author website. If you just go to jonamour-author.com, that would be my author website. And from there are links to Facebook, the Facebook page, and I think Instagram and that kind of stuff. At the top of the page, so you can navigate from the author webpage to any of those other sites. And the webpage, kind of tells the synopsis of the story, and there's a couple of good book trailers there. And then the Facebook page has some backstories. If you scroll all the way to the beginning of the Facebook page when it was created, you'll catch some of the backstories of Bob, that have been posted, since I started this process. So. And on any of those pages, there's always a link, to buy the book. So,
perfect.
It is available on Amazon. Anywhere books are sold, really, you can go and get it at Barnes and Noble. I think they'll have to order it for you, but I don't know, unless people really love bookstores, which I do. I just haven't been in one in a little while. Everything's available on Amazon, so.
Yeah.
But it is in extended distribution internationally also. So anybody listening from another part of the world can buy it on Amazon also.
Well, we don't have a huge international audience, but there are a few. So
and I don't think it's available in Afghanistan or Iraq or Russia. But
well, yeah. We'll have to do some major repairs on foreign policy before that happens, probably.
Yeah, they just don't read this kind of stuff. So
yeah,
yeah.
There you go. Well, Jon, I really appreciate your time. It was this was a fascinating, and I just realized I think I spelled your name wrong on the freaking banner here. I apologize. So anyway, Jon with no H, Jon Amour or Armour. Yeah, Jon Amour, I appreciate your time. I appreciate the book, and I'm looking forward to finishing it up. So, and then if anything else comes out, we'll be in touch.
All right, perfect. Yeah, I mean, if you want that autographed copy, just give me a shout, and I'll get it to you.
Yep, I got all your information now. I got your cell phone and email, so I'll be in touch, and yeah, I'd love a copy. So, thanks again for your time. Thanks everybody for tuning in. If you, this will be released a little earlier for all the Patreon listeners. You have patreon.com/burningdaylight. Sign up there, or Spotify. The paid episodes are on Spotify. They'll be a little earlier. Sometimes there's bonus content. Anyways, that's the best way to support the show. Go check out Branded by Jon Amour, and move your ass. We're burning daylight.
Thanks, Matt. Appreciate it.
Your eyes up in the morning, beneath the stars so bright. Pull your hat down, make sure your cinch is tight. Horses kinda snuffy, cold chill up your spine. We'll get your ass moving, son, we're burning daylight. Burning daylight. Burning daylight. In the saddle till the job's done right. Just together, and you won't catch 'em all. But when you ride through the gate, make sure you sit up tall. I can see the horizon, it's looking pretty bright. Well, get your ass moving, son, we're burning daylight.